completely. Hi, it's Mo. It is November 16th and I have started my first book for, here it is. And I've started my first book to complete my Savidge Reads Prompts, and that is a book, or a book by an author who's your favorite author's favorite author. A book by your favorite author's favorite author. And I went with Thank You, Jeeves by P.G. Wodehouse because this is a P.G. Wodehouse that I have. This is the Jeeves and Wooster that I have. I've read several Jeeves and Wooster. It's exactly unclear which ones I've read and which ones I haven't. But I have 2 listed, so this would be my 3rd, like on Goodreads and Storygraph. And I am about a quarter of the way through and I'm really enjoying it. Jeeves and Wooster is a classic. It's a wonderful group of people, you know, a funny, good time, a special time in the early 20th century. A lot about family relations, a lot about friends, and the lengths that you will go to help your friends. Like Bertie Wooster is always extending himself, sometimes for his own gain, but like almost always to help other people as well. So they're very heartwarming. They're very silly. They definitely have slapstick and goofiness, and just the language that P.G. Wodehouse uses and the turn of phrase that come about in these books are incredible. Reading this on audio, I started physically and the cover fell off, and then I decided to read it on audio. It is narrated by Martin Jarvis. That is my preferred Jeeves and Wooster narrator because I think he's great and he does a great job of it. I will continue to read this, and then I didn't bring it with me, but I did also get The Promise from Hoopla, so I may be reading that for the other Savidge prompt that I haven't completed yet, which is to read a Booker winner author, a book by a Booker winner author. So that can be a book that won the Booker or just another book by someone who has won the Booker, which ties in well because I have this kind of ongoing loose Booker project, which we will talk about more probably in the new year. If this video is unclear, go watch the first part of this video, which is me going through every Savidge prompt for 2025 and every Ben Read Goods prompt for 2025 and seeing what I have or haven't read from those prompts. So these are 2 of the books that I haven't read from those prompts yet. So I'm trying to, before the end of the year, wrap up all my prompt reading, wrap up all my challenge reading for the year. I'm going to do Books and Lala's Buzz Cover and Buzzword reading challenge, which the first video of that is out as well, but I haven't started the second part of that video because I'm waiting for a book on hold at the library. It kind of worked out well because I had way more books from the Ben and Simon Savidge prompts than I did from the Books and Lala prompt. I think her prompts are easier to fulfill and I think I'm more geared towards them, whereas like the Savidge prompts and the Ben Read Goods prompts are a little bit more literary geared, like your favorite author's favorite author or book by a Booker winner. They're a little more specific in what you have to read, whereas hers are more broad. Those 4 reading challenges are the only ones that I'm going to do like this, in this manner, but there's definitely a lot of other projects that I've started that I want to finish that I won't finish by the end of the year, but these 4 I think I can finish by the end of the year. Let me know if you participated in any of these challenges. Books and Lala's Buzzword, Books and Lala's Buzz Cover, Simon Savidge prompts, or the Read Good prompts. And let me know what you read for some of them. Let me know what your favorite author's favorite author was in the comments below. And when I read some more, I will check back in with you. So I have finished Thank You, Jeeves by P.G. Wodehouse, and I'm actually filming this after I initially even wanted to put this video up, because I went to edit this video and realized that I didn't have the footage where I talked about my final thoughts of this. And I thought about inserting the footage from my wrap-up, which you will also have seen from this, but I feel like I want to talk about it here, and I want to talk about how doing Vlogmas, this video is going to come out during Vlogmas, has definitely illustrated to me that I need to work on my filming organization and my footage organization. Something that I realized while doing Vlogmas is that I'm not very good at keeping track of all the footage that I have, and I don't really have a system for that. I basically just film a bunch of clips and then put those clips onto my computer, onto a external hard drive, under the date that I upload them to my computer. So not even the dates that I filmed, and then usually I can piece together when I film, because usually when I film I say it is December 22nd, and then I know when I filmed that particular clip, which is something that I enjoy about myself and my videos, and I plan on continuing to do. But I think I need to figure out a way to either take the footage off my camera sooner, or organize it better on my external hard drive, or somehow organize it into each video that I want to do. I think that would probably be the best way to do it. I just don't know how to go about doing that without it becoming like a totally chaotic mess, and without doubling footage, but also without losing track of where the footage originally came from, if that makes sense. So I don't know what I'm going to do about that, but the whole point of talking about it is that I'm not sure if I lost the footage where I talked about my wrap-up for this, if I thought I had filmed it and I never filmed it. I'm not sure if I added it into something else unknowingly. I don't know. But I did finish Thank You, Jeeves before I started the next book for this video. And Thank You, Jeeves is a book by my favorite author's favorite author, P.G. Wodehouse. And I can totally see the similarities between Douglas Adams, my favorite author, and P.G. Wodehouse's work. The absurdity and the tongue-in-cheek nature of not only the entire book and the premise of everything, but also the language used and how slang is used and turn of phrase is used and different double entendre is used very often, and just how like silly words are used is very similar. Obviously the subject matter is very different. Douglas Adams mainly wrote speculative things, his main series being set in space and having all to do with outer space and science fiction. And then his other most famous work, really those are his two major works, was all about myth retellings and different speculative time travel, interdimensional, different kind of stories, whereas P.D. James is very much rooted in reality. Thank You, Jeeves, as all of the Jeeves and Wooster books, follow Jeeves and Wooster, and if you don't know, Wooster is a upper-class aristocrat who is pretty much a dandy and a layabout and doesn't ever really have a job, but relies on his own money and money from his family and the kindness of his aunts and uncles, and sometimes the meanness of his aunts and uncles. So he's always kind of beholden to various people. But in this one particularly, we don't hear much about the aunts and uncles, but we do hear about friends. And one thing about the Jeeves and Wooster book, and one thing about Wooster in general, is that he is extremely loyal and he loves his friends and he will do anything to try and help them. So he often will get himself into situations that are bad or crazy because he wants to help his friends. In this one, he decides that he needs to practice a certain instrument and Jeeves can't handle it, so they part ways, which is shocking in the book because even though you know, I mean, this is not really a spoiler, that they're going to get back together, this is a more severe severance than I have seen in past books. So a lot of the book, Wooster is on his own, and because Wooster is such a bungler, because he is such a dandy Andy because he is so spoiled. He is not very good on his own, and he gets into all sorts of scrapes. This one was really fun. I liked that they were separated for so much of this book, because something rare in the Jeeves and Wooster book is to see Jeeves kind of at a loss. Now, he wasn't at a loss in this book, but through this book you can really tell that Jeeves loves Wooster as much as Wooster loves Jeeves, and Jeeves needs Wooster as much as Wooster needs Jeeves. Jeeves is an extremely capable servant, right-hand man, a man, what is that called? Like, you know, your man of Wooster, and we see that Jeeves thrives on being able to help Wooster. Jeeves thrives on the chaos that Wooster creates that then Jeeves can correct, you know? Which is just so fun. I think the downside of this, and I talked about it in my wrap-up, is that this book was written in the 1920s or 30s in England, 1933, and it has a lot of racist elements to it. So there's the N-word in this book. They say the N-word in the physical copy. I read this on audio, and in the audio book they tone it down a little bit. It's not said at the time in the way, like it's so hard to explain, because I understand that it is a bad word, should not have been said, should never have been used, always had a negative connotation. But it was also the common vernacular at that time. So they're not saying it with malice in this book. And Bertie Wooster is not malicious in any way towards the black characters in this book. He actually reveres the black characters in this book. Now, are they really characters? No, they're just side musicians that he wants to learn from, but he talks about how great they are and how much he wants to learn from them and what a great time he has talking to them and how wonderful they are. So, like, it's not trying to portray black people as lesser necessarily. It's not trying to, I don't know what that is, but it looks really gross. It's not trying to be mean to black people necessarily, but by the very nature of using the N-word, by the very nature of using blackface, which they do use in here, it is against black people. So it's a hard topic and it's a hard subject matter to parse, because I really enjoyed this book. I like the clever ways that Bertie Wooster tries to get out of things. I wish he had not used blackface in this book, because it really takes me out of it. Obviously, as a modern reader, I can't really get on board with that kind of behavior. I can't get on board with using the N-word, especially for a white author, even if it is not in malice, even if it is not supposed to be demeaning, even if it is not supposed to be malicious. It's not good. So it's a really interesting thing that a reader who reads backlist books, specifically reads any books around this time, and I think specifically English books a lot of times, because I think more American books do use it with malice. Not just the N-word, many different things, like reading Dorothy L. Sayers' first Lord Peter Wimsey book, there's a lot of anti-Semitism. There's a lot of racism against Jewish people. Now, I didn't really like that book in general. I didn't love the mystery and I didn't love the book, but definitely that racist element took away from it a huge amount, and unfortunately that happened with this as well. I'm not going to be able to think about all the fun and happy and wonderful things that happened in this book without also thinking of the racism that is inherent in this author's work, and in this work particularly. So again, we can hope that P.G. Wodehouse had black friends. We can hope that P.G. Wodehouse did not feel malice towards black people. We can hope that P.G. Wodehouse believed in equality. We can hope that P.G. Wodehouse just used the language that was available to him at the time, but how would we really know? So that does take away from this book, and it is something to pay attention to and to realize as you're reading this book. Maybe you want to get a later copy, a more modern copy. Maybe that is toned down. I'm sure there's still blackface in it, but maybe they use some language around it or a footnote or something that would help. Obviously, a vintage copy is going to be vintage. It's going to have the language that it has. Like I said, reading on an audio and narrated by Martin Jarvis. They luckily did not say the full N-word, but like, not ideal no matter what. That fulfilled my Savidge Prompt reading, so now I've read all the Savidge Prompts. Something that also happened while editing this video was I went through, like I did with the Books and Lala Buzz reading challenges, and I assigned books to all the challenges so that now my challenges are complete. I want to make sure that they look complete by the end of the year, and I screenshotted that, and of course my screenshot didn't work. I was actually going to do this clip as a voiceover for that once I realized that the actual clip was missing, And then that screenshot didn't work, that screen recording didn't work. So now I'm filming this and the video is going up late and everything's going up late, but you know what? That's what it is. So I fulfilled the Savidge Prompts, and now the book that I'm going to move on to in this video will fulfill the Ben Readgood prompts. And speaking of Ben Readgoods and the Readgood prompts, he just put out a video for the new year of prompts, which will be listed in the description box below. And I think tomorrow, Wednesday, December 23rd, some of the prompts for the 2026 Savidge Prompts are coming out as well. So I will leave their channel, his mother and his channels listed down below as well. So in a way, losing that footage allows you to have this new information, which is not bad. But let's move on and talk about the books that I read to complete the Ben Readgood's Readgood Challenge. It is November 25th, and I started The Promise, and I tried to read it physically, and I tried to read it on audio a couple of times, and I couldn't get into it. So I did DNF The Promise by Damon Galgut. I just found I didn't realize that this had a child protagonist. So I was like, I don't know, do I want to read from a child protagonist? I'm not sure. 2, it looks very slim, but it is over 300 pages, and I just wasn't in the mood. It is South African, and the reader did use a South African accent, which was cool, but I don't know, I couldn't get into it. So I'm going to DNF this for now, not forever. I'm going to keep this one. But this was a Booker Prize winning author. I went to my next Booker Prize winning author, who is Julian Barnes, and The Sense of an Ending actually won the Booker in 2011. I've been wanting to read this one for a long time, and I'm glad that I finally did. It definitely took me a little while to get into this. I did read this one on audio as well, and I have quite a few other Julian Barnes to read, so it made me excited to get to those. This is like a very annotated copy, which is cute. I did follow along, sometimes reading the book, but mostly I read this all in audio, and like I said, at the very beginning of this was a little bit hard to get into, but then I ended up really getting into the meat of it and really enjoying the story. It's one of those very quiet stories that I like, which is just someone reflecting back on their life and maybe the mistakes they've made, certainly in this case the mistakes that they've made, and where they're at in life now. This follows our main character, whose name is Tony, and he is an older man. He's been married once and divorced, but he's like on good terms with his ex-wife. He has one daughter who's an adult and lives her own life and has her own family, and he's on fine terms with his daughter, and he lives a fine life. But he is reflecting back on his past and on his youth and on his friend group and the things that happened to them at school, like deaths and falling in love and friendships and breaking up of friendships, and thinking about how all of that has affected him to be where he is today, and maybe how some of that affected him to have fine relationships with people but not have passionate or exciting relationships with people. So this follows him talking about his time at school and how when he was young his friend group were all together and they experienced someone in their class committing suicide, and their kind of thoughts on that, how their upbringing affected what they thought of it and how their friendship group affected what they thought of it, and then later when one of the friend group ends up passing away, how Tony feels about that and how the things that he said and did at the time of the young man committing suicide might have affected his reaction. And then a lot of this is about Tony's first love and his first real relationship with a woman and how that affected him and whether he looked at that in the wrong light at the time. So he's looking back in his life thinking about all the things that maybe he wasn't accurate about when he was young. I was going to do a whole spoiler section in this vlog of this book because I think the point of this book is the idea of, and it's even said in the book, looking back at things, you don't remember things how they were, like how they actually happened. Your memory of things is tainted by your own experience, it's tainted by time, it's tainted by the picture that you paint of yourself and how you are always going to paint yourself in a better light than maybe you were. There are things in Tony's past that he did that were really damaging to other people, and he doesn't remember them. Like, he sees that time and those things that he did from a completely different lens than like how it actually happened. So a lot of this book is going back and talking to people or finding journals or different things that he realizes his memory of everything is very different. And I think that the kind of spoiler section that I was going to do was going to deep dive more into how this is, I think, supposed to be a very reflective book. I think this is supposed to be a book about gaining perspective, right? But really this is just like a white privileged male book. It's just that this person is not necessarily going to learn from any of the reflections that he has, that he is going to butt into people's lives, that he is going to make people's lives chaos, that he is going to never take responsibility for his own actions throughout this book. And the end result, when he realizes that and these are very mild spoilers, when he realizes that he hasn't recollected things correctly, he doesn't change his behavior. You know, he just goes on being a very privileged male in his life, in society, in the world. And it was like a very frustrating read, and it was very just not satisfying in its ending once you've read more. And I don't think that that is how people look at this book, but I think that once you've read more books by various types of people, when you've read more books from people who are coming from a place of less privilege, when you know more about the world, it's hard to look at books like this with their intended kind of moral ending when the person never learned. Like, there was never any actual growth throughout the story. So very mild spoilers, I guess, but I would definitely still read it. I thought it was a really interesting book, and I did like the way that it was constructed and that we kind of moved a little bit backwards in time. I really like books where people reflect back on their lives. I really like books like that. I read another book like that earlier this year. What was it? If You Kept a Record of Sins. So that was a young man reflecting back on his life and his relationship with his mother. And then this is a old man reflecting back to his like middle childhood. So I did enjoy this. I will definitely read more Julian Barnes, but I don't know. I think in my reading now, I'm like past this point of like indulgent men. You know, what can I say? So for this vlog, we read my favorite author's favorite author, P.G. Wodehouse, and we read The Sense of an Ending by Julian Barnes, who is a Booker-winning author, and we actually read the Booker-winning book, so that's very exciting. I think that's it. I think that we accomplished all the prompts that we were supposed to accomplish from the Savidge Prompts and the Ben Reads Good prompts. I'm glad to have ticked off this reading prompt challenge. I'm glad that we have read some more books. I'm glad that I read a book that's been on my want to read for a really long time. So let me know if you've read any of the books that I read here, including let me know if you read The Promise, because I would like to know what you thought of it. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!